Hi, I'm here at the Octave 9 space at Benaroya Hall, speaking with leaders from the Seattle Symphony. In this episode, we'll discuss the role Seattle Symphony plays in making music education and classical music inclusive and accessible for all people, and announce an exciting new partnership between my organization, Key to Change, and the Seattle Symphony. That's right now, here on Unmute the Voices. Jérémy and Krishna, welcome to Unmute the Voices. How you guys doing?
Oh, great. Pleasure to be here.
Same. Very nice.
Well, I should say it's a pleasure to be here because we are actually in the Octave 9 space of the Seattle Symphony. Can you tell us just a little bit about this space? It's a brand new space and I'm glad to be in it.
Well, happy to. This is our incubation space. It's our education space. It's our contemporary music space. It's a laboratory. It has audio and visual capabilities. Jérémy, you want to say a little bit about what we can do here?
Oh, we can do a lot. We can do moving the sound around in the space. We can do 360, completely immersive video experiences. It is really polyvalent space where we host composer workshop as well as really breaking the mold of what music can be.
And I gotta just say, the first time that I was in this space, it was right before the pandemic happened, and it was with Seth Parker Woods, who gave this illuminating, amazing performance here. I actually felt like I was kind of at a Beyonce concert because the video and the audio along with the just live performance was simply just incredible. It was one of the most amazing experiences, I think, of my life as a concert goer, to be able to see how innovative a space could be and how an artist could come in and just completely transform and captivate everyone in the space by using this space. So I just really appreciate the versatility of what you all are doing here at the Seattle Symphony and how you are giving artists the liberty to be able to be so creative. Who would have ever thought that a just room would be able to do that? Generally, artists are in concert halls, etc., with no capacity to be able to, use the room in a way that, incorporates video and audio. So I just thought that was really cool.
I'm just going to say, and Seth, of course, is coming back next season. And then if you liked that experience, also look forward. We're going to transform this space into a cave with a huge Buddha in it to support Tandun's Buddha Passion that's next November. So you get audio, you get video, and you just get this really cool vibe of an art installation space that allows us to do things that we just couldn't do at all 5-6 years ago.
Wow. That's just amazing to be able to bring a space and transform it into an art gallery with music. You guys are just doing all sorts of innovative projects here at the Seattle Symphony, and just the diversity that you all have here in this organization, from your guest artists to the programming to even this space, just really helps people who are from all different communities and backgrounds come here to the orchestra and feel just included and feel safe. Let's talk a little bit about your educational outreach that you all do here at the Symphony. And you're known for being an organization that is incredibly inclusive of all different communities and people from different backgrounds. I'd love to hear a little bit about how you all engage with communities of different ethnicities and different backgrounds and how you all partner with those organizations.
Let's see, with a lot of patience and commitment. I think it comes from sort of often we bring for example, a large performance on the main stage. And in parallel to that, we work sort of grassroots where we find and we develop trusting relationship with community groups that know their community very well, more than we do, in fact. And we build a trusting relationship. It could be a small thing like the beginning of a masterclass or a visit to the hall. And from there, build perhaps a larger concert where maybe a student group comes and perform with the string quartet or the symphony. I think it takes sort of the commitment of building a relationship is the most important, and then build little by little so we find something that both the partner and the Seattle Symphony can both be proud of. Like we don't presume what we're going to build. We come together and try to create something that we couldn't do without each other. That's, I think, a key part of building a trusting collaboration is really to not anticipate what we want, but to know that we want to work together and go on an adventure. Sort of feels like building a plane and flying at the same time, you know.
Right.
But it's very exciting, and we all get to performances and to activities that everybody wants to do another one right away. And that every event, every partnership is really baked in to build the next one. It's always in the learning process as well.
What are you all hoping to gain, or what sort of goals does the Seattle Symphony have with its educational outreach in the community?
It's a big question. It's very vast, right? I think initially is access to opportunity, something that Krishna brings to the table every time, returning to that. And that's sort of very much anchored to what we do here. And then really is figuring out the how. And the how is really in through this trusting relationship, to go with partnership, to listen to what they have experienced, what they would like to see, and do our best to get there. And it's very enriching to sort of see the thing that you love really can open up to a new way. To like you get to revisit what you thought you knew, and appreciate it more. So really the goal is sort of to go really focus on communities that have historically not been invited, not had access, and to have a really double down on that commitment, multi-year commitment, still in this sort of, yet in this, always in this learning environment. We are learning, the partners are learning, because we're going into a space that historically has not been really there, especially in the Puget Sound. So that's very exciting, and this is where the seed is. Right. Then after that, 1 year at a time with patience, and again, sort of nothing that we know the answer completely, but we know that we want to do this, and let's build it together.
And I really appreciate that, because my organization, Key to Change, has had a relationship with the Seattle Symphony, and it started out just as a master class and has really morphed into something much bigger, right?
Oh, absolutely. I remember you mentioned Seth Parker Woods, the student visit. We scheduled a master class with your students, and then it evolved where we had a joint performance where we did a free community concert in Renton, in the beautiful IKEA Performance Center. It's a beautiful
That
space.
was fun.
Yes, it was. And the students performed there, which was a great way to sort of continue the conversation. Just last year, or during the pandemic, the heart of the pandemic, through the community stage funds, your group performed here, and we hosted such a performance. And now here we are, like what's the logical next step, and sort of a bigger, longer commitment with a series of activities that we work together on.
And I have to just say that I'm really excited about the partnership between Key to Change and the Seattle Symphony, and the fact that it's going to now be a more long-standing, multi-year relationship. I think that's incredibly important to not only our students, but I think just the community in general. Some of the activities that we'll do, of course, include a master class, coming to the symphony and seeing performances, as well as being able to engage with members of your orchestra. What I think I'm most excited about is the concerto competition that we're going to now place into our solo string festival, which will allow one of our students who wins to be able to get a debut with the Seattle Symphony. And I think that that is a really big deal. Can you talk a little bit about why it is that it has been so difficult for students who come from marginalized communities or underrepresented communities? Why has it been so difficult for students to be able to gain access to play with a symphony orchestra or even just come and participate in a master class? Why has that been so difficult? And then part two to that question is speak a little bit about why this partnership between our organizations is also important. And Krishna, I'm not going to let you off the hook on this either.
No.
Happy to. Happy to.
Would you like to start?
Here, so this is the key question, right? And we've been talking about this from an orchestral point of view at the League of American Orchestras, I think since 2008. That was the first conference that I attended where this was really a topic raised. And I'm not sure that we have found all the answers yet. I certainly don't have all the answers. But Jérémy alluded to access to opportunity. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure that we as a society have been great at providing access to opportunity for all equally in the last 40 years. And I think there's a lot of work we need to do in that regard. And we are certainly committed here at Benaroya Hall and the Seattle Symphony to provide greater access. You talked about our education concerts. We have an in-house working title where we want Benaroya Hall to be an extension of everybody's living room in the greater Seattle area, right? This is your building. This is the people's building, and it serves everyone. And if we are not seeing everyone accessing the building, then we have to ask ourselves, what can we do to make sure that you know that not just for the paid ticketed part, but for the entirety of the experience, being on stage, making music, working with us in the administration, partaking in the free community events that we have. We want everybody to be in this building if they have a desire to be there. Think of it in terms of if somebody were to put, if you like airplanes, this is a Boeing town, right?
Yeah.
If somebody were to put an airplane in your backyard and said, hey, free for you to use to learn how to fly, here's an airplane. Which kid wouldn't run straight to that thing and try to play with it and then maybe even learn how to fly in it, right? We have a concert hall that is one of the finest instruments, because that's what concert halls are. They are an expansion of your instrument. They make you sound good. The hall vibrates with you. It breathes with you. We've got this. This is the People's Hall. It's yours. But not everybody knows it's theirs, and not everybody truly feels like it's theirs. And we've got to work on that. That's important. The second part to the issue, I think, is that if you've been on stage at Benaroya Hall, if you've played a violin concerto at Benaroya Hall, you begin to understand that your dream can become a reality. And I think too many people haven't had that experience. And when we're talking about marginalized communities, we're also talking about not getting enough music education that's a hands-on learning of the instrument, playing it in front of your peers. And by the way, that's no longer even true of marginalized communities where we're talking about income. In the United States, we don't have enough opportunity to really have music in our public schools. So it's becoming ubiquitous. So that's a whole different problem. But at the end of the day, what we want to make sure is, and that's why this collaboration with Key to Change is so important, is that it's not just about us going out into the community and supporting you with needs you might have in terms of having musicians come and do master classes, but bringing the community into Benaroya Hall and get that feeling of, I'm on stage and this feels really good.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think, in addition, there's sort of there's be some complacency.
Yeah.
We just go with who we know, the studios that you know,
Right.
and eventually within a town, it's just, this is how it is.
Right.
This is just, and it does take action to break those patterns. So, such this partnership and many others. And again, I keep, because I'm in education, it's about learning. So like, let's do something and learn from it. What is the repercussion, and do better next year. So I think it's sort of having this where enough with those patterns where everybody is grandfathered in, basically. And I don't need even to listen. I just know you come from this studio, you're good, right? And that needs to change. And we absolutely have a great responsibility and a role to sort of change, because eventually it drives to us, like a large orchestra, etc. So we can wield the power to like, okay, let's pay attention here and there, and bring young people into a situation that they could dream like, oh, I could do that too. Like that's also part of what I can do. And not just that it's limited to what they might see around them or in the neighborhood or on TV. And in addition, I think is sort of representation on stage. I mean, if every time you see a great soloist, this person doesn't look like you or doesn't come from where you're from. So many times that doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. So it's a multiple ways to really need to address this.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about students in Key to Change who will be in awe of this opportunity, in awe of having the chance to play for a member of the Seattle Symphony in a master class, or have the opportunity of auditioning during the concerto competition and a student being selected to stand up and play a solo with the orchestra. Take yourself back to when you were 14 or 15 years old, and how would you have responded to having an opportunity to play with one of the top symphony orchestras here in the United States? What would that have been like for you as a 13, 14, 15-year-old?
I think I would have been scared out of my mind, firstly, and I would have practiced like hell to get there. But I've got to tell you, I grew up in a multi-ethnic family in Europe, actually. I'm half Indian, I'm half German, but my German's also American, right? And I had access to a piano my entire life, which that's a great start, right?
Yeah.
There's a piano in that room, and as a kid, you want to play with it. And then I had role models that I could see in action. So I saw conductor Zubin Mehta, and since I'm part Indian, I was like, oh wow, there's one of us out there doing this sort of thing. So I'm not just having fun with this piano, but if I practice really hard, I could do what he's doing. Then I saw Andre Watts, who I later had the great fortune of studying in master classes piano with. And I saw Andre Watts, and I thought, oh wow, there's a person that looks a little bit more like my dad and a little bit less like my mom, but he's out there and he's doing what he's doing. We need role models, right? We need people. We need to see that there's somebody else out there, because if you're the only one, that's awfully lonely. And if you don't have a great support network, then it's really hard and it's really lonely. But the idea that you mentioned, my wife grew up in Rochester, New York, and she actually did have that opportunity to play a movement of Prokofiev Concerto with the Rochester Phil. And when we both met in college, she had that experience with her that made her so much stronger as an artist. I'm not talking about as a student. I'm not talking about as a learner. I'm talking about as a fully formed adult. You have experiences that make you who you are as an adult. And if as a teenager you've stood in front a professional organization and you've held your own and you've played your instrument and you've made music and you had a good experience, that gives you strength. It gives you strength because especially if you don't look like everybody else, if your background is not like everybody else's background, you need that strength as you progress into the profession because you will be challenged and you will be questioned. If you don't look like everybody else, let's just be honest here, the world isn't always the kindest place. It's not like everybody's going to rush out there to say, you're great, keep going. You have to work at that. You have to earn yourself that confidence that you know what you're doing. While it's hard, it's the right thing to do. So that's what I would answer to that question. It's scary, but if you overcome it, it makes you a heck of a lot stronger.
What are some of the outcomes that you anticipate or hope for between the partnership with Seattle Symphony and Key to Change?
Oh, for me, that's a fast answer. I'm excited to see the talent that exists out there in the community that I haven't even been introduced to. And I'm excited to see that energy, that fresh thinking of a whole new group of people that will come to us, that will come into this building, that you will bring into this building, that will give us new ideas of what we want to do. Keep in mind, we're in a creative field.
Right.
You need people with bright eyes, fresh ideas, and a little bit unencumbered by the realities of, I just spoke about becoming an adult. You need some people who haven't actually become the adult yet in the room to really dream outside the box. And I am convinced there is talent out there that we haven't seen that we're going to be amazed by. And that then filters back into the community.
Right.
When you see the look on the mom's eyes when that kid is up there doing something that nobody thought 2-3 years ago they could be doing. When you see the friends going, wow, you know, this is my person up there. And they go, yeah, I support that. That creates energy in a community that I would say is positive energy. And if there's anything I know in our country today, we need a lot of positive energy.
Yeah.
I would add that I'm really sort of in the mode of sort of listening to what the kids want. Like, how is that going to really blossom their life or be part of that? Is it going to give maybe access to a different type of college experience because they've had that experience? I'm not presuming that every kid that has a violin wants to become a professional.
Right.
I do think that they should, if they're passionate about the violin or whatever instruments, that they should get access to it. Just period. They just should. It's just, it should not be like, can I or can I not, why, it should. Then after that, you do what you want to do with it. There's having the experience as Christian is very enriching as a young person, but it's just as enriching if you want to become a lawyer, a psychologist, an architect. These moments where you've worked towards something, you've accomplished, you've been applauded for it. It's like, okay, I can do stuff.
Right.
And that's where, to me, sort of, it's also part of that. Creating more professionals is exciting, especially from communities where we haven't seen that so much in our history. But I also think, to me, much broader. Like, does it help to get into this college versus this college? Because we know this is also what young people are thinking through their schooling. Like, getting the grades is not enough. Like, the pages of volunteer activity and what they do after, it's amazing. And the idea that they would, through an engagement with the Seattle Symphony, would support students to become a psychologist, to get to one of the top schools, that would be amazing as well.
Jérémy, let me ask you, just reflecting on what Krishna just said about a student who might be afraid of participating in any of the activities for Seattle Symphony because it's the Seattle Symphony, right? It can come across as intimidating, especially to someone who is not accustomed to being in a classical music space. What sort of advice would you give a young person or to a parent who may be watching about why they should be engaged and involved in these activities that we're going to present to the community?
Let's see. Well, it's a lot of fun. right?
Yeah.
We talk about work in terms of how stressful it is. It is very enriching. It's when you commit to learning this piece and you get through it, it's a sense of accomplishment that then you're like, I can do anything. As far as supporting a student to succeed, and that's a key part, is really a student that succeeds is just not on their own. They have a great network of teachers, such as yourselves and your entire organization. And in this case here, Seattle Symphony players that will sort of help give the experience, prepare the student to have a good time on stage. And that's sort of often something that is not completely told, is the young soloist. Then they have an amazing amount of support. They do the work, but they're not alone. We're never alone to get to where we are. And I think that's a major difference. It's like the kids that we've seen, or the students, or the soloists we've seen, when you ask their stories, well, there was a lot of support there. They might not, it was just, but of course I've had it. And that to me is a big difference. It's not so much, am I working harder than you? No, like that's what, you just had more, you got parents that drive you 2 hours to the best studios.
Right.
You know what I mean? You had a great instrument. You had access to an orchestra nearby.
Right.
And those that don't get that, they can work all day long. There's a moment, there's a cap. It's like you don't, because you need those experiences, that support. And I really, this is where I'm looking forward, is to sort of be there as an organization to support students to be able to dream, and then they do whatever they want with it. I think that's the part. Is I want the world is for them to be who they want to be.
Right. And I think that also goes for students who play in a school orchestra, right?
Absolutely.
That it's important for them to take lessons, and that it's important for them, obviously, to be in their school orchestra programs. But a lot of students who might even be playing in their orchestra don't even know that they have access to lessons. Can you talk a little bit about that, of why it's important for students, especially if they're going to be in a partnership like this, right? That why it's important that they be both in their school orchestra program and also in private lessons.
So I think joining a school orchestra program is a great community building. You join a community.
Right.
You join people that might think like you, that might encourage one another to do something that is really yours. And you do it with others, which is one of the unique things about this art form. You go practice on your own, and then you come with others and you create something together. Something, in fact, that you couldn't do by yourself, especially in the orchestra field. Playing the cello part of a big symphony is just a cello part. But when you hear it in context of everybody else, you see yourself fitting within a larger context, and that you matter, because if there's no cello part, it's not the piece, or whatever the part. So that the community aspect of within an orchestra, I think, is quite wonderful as young people to join. Being supported with private lessons is just, you will have more fun in the orchestra, right? You will feel more confident to play all the notes. You also learn how to learn often, how to break down a passage, how to approach something that is difficult. You will learn perseverance. You will learn slow mastery, that it takes a long time to get very good at something, but the half-hour a day gets you there versus like trying to slam it, so excuse the language, in half hour before the thing.
Right.
You will learn preparedness. And you will learn the reward of preparedness.
Right.
And all those things is baked into this tradition in the way in which the music works. I particularly like the slow mastery part of it, that is just showing up every day and bowing away and try to get to the beautiful sounds and sharing that with others.
For me, if I can just say this, because I was a young kid winning competitions in my regional environment, and I was a pianist, and I was actually asked I did not play in my school orchestra for a long time, and then I was asked because they needed a keyboard player, which meant harpsichord. It's a Handel program, and I was almost like, this is a little beneath me, I'm playing Chopin and Rachmaninoff, you want me to play some Handel. And here's the thing. First of all, I did not know that I did not know that if you're playing Baroque keyboard, there's a skill involved that I really did not possess at that point, and I was thrown into the cold water, and I did fine. But aside from all of this, slow craftsmanship and learning, which I totally agree with, suddenly I was in this place with a lot of beautiful people that after concerts would hang out and today you'd go get bubble tea. Back then we actually went and supported the Golden Arches after a concert with hamburgers and fries and stuff in Germany of all places. But the point is you have conversations, you get to know each other. There's a camaraderie. I would say the majority of the people I was in the orchestra with today are not in the field of music, but they still come and support and listen, right? And so it's about quality of life. It's about meeting people.
Right.
And again, it's about building a network of people who understand what you're about and you understand what they're about. And it all comes back to that first question you asked. What do you need for success? You need a network of people that support you. And our job is to make sure that those are available for everybody.
I really appreciate you both saying that, because we're building a partnership together, right? And I think that is what will help demonstrate to students the value of partnership through our two organizations working together. But then there's the other side of it too, where you might have someone who says, well, the Seattle Symphony is doing this thing with Key to Change and they're just checking a box. How do you respond to people or critics who claim that Seattle Symphony might just be checking a box, or that this is just kind of a fad thing of everyone now being inclusive and everyone, because no one wants to be labeled as racist, right? How do you respond to that?
We're not, sorry, I gotta go.
Yeah, of course.
And I
Go there.
I know Jérémy is totally on the same page, but we are not checking a box because what we're doing is not foreign to who we believe we are. And I want to explain that. So by investing into the community, by collaborating with the community, what we're doing is we're investing into ourselves. We don't see ourselves today anymore as a separate entity. And that may not have always been the case, but today I feel very strongly that, we are the larger community of Seattle. I don't know if that makes any sense, right? But I believe holistically that if I am not serving, if I, Benaroya Hall, if I, Seattle Symphony, am not serving the full community, I'm actually not serving myself well. And so this is a question of what do you believe in, what are your values, and who do you know that you are? Some people walk around their whole lives thinking they know who they are. But one of the problems is we know who we are, and we are all of Seattle. We need to make that connection with everyone to understand that that's where we stand today. In other words, the door is already open. You want to walk through that door, I'm here to work with you, and I'm here to learn from you, and I'm here to participate with you in your life's story, because that's the story that artistically must be told on this stage, whether it's through music or spoken word or us having a round table conversation. It's all the same thing. So we can't be checking a box because we are not wanting to continue in the way that we once were. For the last 100 years, I would say classical music, orchestral music was very European-centric. And that's a problem not because there's anything wrong with that music. There's a lot of really good music. I love Beethoven and Brahms and Rachmaninoff and Tchaikovsky and Schnittke and all of that. But the problem is that we were myopically focused on only those composers, not realizing, and we spoke about this just a little bit in the run-up to this show, that there are other composers who've been very prolific.
Right.
But more importantly, there are other high art forms on different continents that are just as important to people there as what we think classical music is to us. So we have to really open ourselves up as an organization to do a couple of things. The first thing we have to let go of is that there is a superior art form. No, all high art forms are equal. Doesn't matter where they come from. So there is good music and there is not so good music. but there is no such thing as only Beethoven is good music.
Right.
Right? Grant Still is good music. We just haven't heard enough of it to actually know what we're talking about. And so that's the other part of all of this is that we are expanding our canon, we are expanding our base of knowledge right now in these performing arts organizations. And then the last point that I would say is this. Anyone who does not holistically invest into their community in the United States right now is missing the future. The future is a community that is more inclusive. The future is our diversity. There was a congressman, I think it was Cummings, who said, diversity is not our challenge, it is our promise. And that is absolutely true. If there is something that the United States has still to offer the rest of the world, it is to fulfill and realize the promise that comes out of the diversity of our society. So no, we're not checking a box.
So then, what sort of advice would you give to other white-led organizations, and in this case, symphony orchestras, on how they can be more inclusive, especially in their hiring, right? Because if a person of color, in this case, let's say a Black musician, does an audition, successfully passes the audition, gets into the orchestra, and there's a thing called tenure, right? Can you speak a little bit about what organizations can do to not only recruit musicians of color, more specifically Blacks, but also how to retain them once they have won past that audition?
So that's a complex and multifaceted question. First of all, on the mechanisms how to recruit more musicians of color, the Sphinx organization out of Detroit has done an amazing job in getting people access to opportunity, and we're actually a participant in that, for instance. So I hate this word pipeline, but what this is about is making sure that musicians of color, Black, African American musicians have the ability not just to know about auditions, but to get there. If they don't have the financial means, if that's the barrier to it, then there are scholarships available to get there. But that doesn't get you the job, right? And you've actually pointed out, it's not even just getting through the audition, which now there's a big debate in our country whether there should be a screen all the way to the end. And we actually had that debate at the Seattle Symphony, and we've decided we're going to have, and we are in that process now, we are having auditions that have a full screen to the end. What that means is that the committee can't see the candidate until they have won the job, until the final candidate has played the last note, and we say number 5, for instance, is it. Then the screen comes up, and then you get to see who it is. I am guaranteeing you it's going to be interesting because about 40 years ago, a lot of orchestras had the screen up all the time, and it still did not lead to greater diversity. So I'm not sure that alone is going to make that change. But the bigger problem I find is that somebody who does get hired actually has a really difficult time during the tenure process, right? Let me say that again. Somebody who does get hired has a really difficult time sometimes getting through the tenure process. And this brings us back to you're asking what advice can I give? I don't know that I'm qualified to give anyone advice because I'm on this journey with everybody together and the journey is going to be long. But here's what happens. When you bring somebody that doesn't come from the traditional background, that doesn't come from all the traditional expectations, and that hasn't been trained or imbued with the traditional rules of how things are supposed to have worked. When you bring someone who is different, you need to bring them because you value that their viewpoint will be different. And where a lot of performing arts organizations in our country fall short is we have created this false sense of a holistic culture that everybody needs to blend into as the right way to go. And when we are in the creative arts, If we have everybody in that thinking the same thought, coming from the same training, coming from the same background, how possibly creative could we be? We've created an echo chamber where suddenly somebody coming from the outside with great new ideas, with a total different perspective on what we could be doing and should be doing, suddenly that person gets viewed as, you are starting chaos. We just got everything nice and quiet over here in this corner. You're coming in from outside. You're telling us none of this was really perfect? How dare you tell us we were not perfect? We are the pinnacle of God's creation when it comes to playing Mozart and Beethoven. I mean, it's kind of funny, but you get where I'm coming from, right?
Of course.
And the problem of that is also how we got trained at the conservatory and university level, right? We were taught to think that when we get on stage, most of us were trained to win competitions.
Right.
So we were
That's true.
taught to get on stage to believe, I am God's gift to the piano right now, and nobody else knows better. But then when you get into an orchestra, suddenly you're supposed to begin to think, well, we're all, singing Kumbaya, this is so great, and nobody challenged nobody, and nothing ever, because we're it now. This is the best. Whether it's the Seattle Symphony or the New York Philharmonic, every city has its orchestra and everybody getting into it. We're the best. My only advice is this. When we start bringing in people who weren't trained in the same cultural expectation, who weren't formed by the same family and societal networks, who by default will have different viewpoints because of their background, who suffered through injustice for hundreds of years and had to take that down a notch because they couldn't be angry about it in their day-to-day life in order to function. When we bring people in of color, we have to be receptive that they will have other ideas, and we will have to incorporate those ideas as something that we value, because that's where you come back to checking the box. If I'm just letting a few people in and I say, okay, but now please sit down and shut up, then I'm checking a box. And we have not yet been very good at integrating those new ideas. I include myself in this, and even though I am of a multi-ethnic, multiracial background, having been trained and formatted in a Eurocentric way, that this is the high culture for all the earth to follow, it's something we need to start unlearning to be open.
What is needed? What do people need in order to truly embrace diversity? What do they need?
My answer to that would be fearlessness, courage to make mistakes, and the conviction to know that there is more to life than what we currently understand.
How do we make that possible? What does one need in order to have more courage?
That's a very hard question for me to answer, because I can tell you from my personal experience just over the last couple of years, if you had asked me 4 years ago, I would have said, oh, that's simple. Just don't worry so much and just do. But then in the last 3 years, I began to understand there are consequences for your courage. And courage is truly not an optional thing either. You can't turn it on one moment, turn it off the next moment, right? When you turn on your ability to have courage, and I'd love Jérémy to say something to this too, because it's not my exclusive, I don't know in some ways, but when you turn on the ability to have your courage and to just live by it, you have to also turn on the understanding there will be pushback.
Right.
And that pushback will grow exponentially as to how much success you're having. And we have to talk about what success means.
Right.
But if you turn on that courage and you allow it to have success, there will be pushback because not everybody wants this.
Right. I think with courage come also the wanting to learn more, to be somebody else. that the idea that who we are as a core, I don't follow that. I think it's about becoming.
Right.
We are becoming a person, and the more interaction, the more books I read, the more people I meet, I see a different perspective, and I become more richer, more complete, more in touch with the world as a whole, with all this multifaceted point of view. So creating a culture that welcomes this, that is not the contrary, the way like where we reinforce the status quo. That does take some work, where you actually have to create an environment where people are welcome to try, welcome to take risk in as far as like, I'm not sure about this thinking, but this is where I'm at on the thinking, and the free exchange of like, oh, well, what about this other idea? Which comes from sort of a growth mindset type approach. And looking forward for something we don't know. The idea that I'm being comfortable with just what we know seems, in my humble opinion, very boring. It's like beige every day. Where interacting with people that come from different parts of the United States, or different backgrounds, or different childhoods, it's really enriching. I don't know how else would you want to be in the world, to be quite honest. So in an institution, it's true that needs to be cultivated. It won't happen by itself, and that's the proof is in the pudding. If you don't do anything, it just quickly, people that are like-minded sort of clump together, and this is where we are now. I think there is sort of creating structures that encourage all of this.
I have one final question for both of you. At the core of all this, and we talked very briefly about this, is music education, right? That in classical music, there's traditions that are passed down from generation to generation, century to century. And a lot of these are just basically recycled ideas, right? And so as we are evolving in our mindset, I'll use that, as we're learning how to become more inclusive, what can schools, more specifically universities and conservatories, what can they do to help create a more inclusive environment? Can you both give me just a very brief response to what schools and universities can do to be a bit more inclusive in or at least teaching this, so that when they get into the professional world, they're more open and accessible to it?
A lot. I would say really down the list is sort of like...
I mean, the list is long, right?
That's right. But like...
but what's kind of your top three?
I would say, so like who you hire as teachers, representation there.
So not your friends, right?
That's right. Which, again, we talked about like sort of like you go outside of your circle. If your circle is just people that look like me, for instance. Also the rep that you teach. Like, what is the pieces that you teach the students? Why are you always teaching these, the 3 Bs all the time? You know what I mean? Also an exposure of all sorts of music, not just the music that you're supposedly here to learn. I mean, the Hindustani tradition is amazing. The music from Ghana is amazing. And really understand that you're part of a planet of music. And therefore, you're delivering these skills to express yourself through this medium. But that also opens to other places to be. And sort of that sort of democratization of what art is and who it belongs to. And it doesn't belong to anybody.
Right.
Like it's just here for all of us. It's one of the unique sort of human expression. And not just a subgroup of humanity to go through. A sort of actionable item is sort of, those would be sort of the music that we play and who we see playing it.
Yeah. Krishna?
I think this is really unfair. We should have another program just about this question because it's huge.
Yeah.
But what you've just outlined, I think, is the important part, which is we've been walking forwards, looking backwards the whole time in our education. We're always looking backwards, trying to look forwards. We need to finally turn this body around and start looking walking forwards, looking forwards. So we need to actually outline what is the society we really want? What is the community we really want? What is the definition of excellence we actually really truly want? If the definition of excellence is a status quo that was defined 100 years ago, does that still serve us at all? I mean, technology is growing by leaps and bounds every single day. Why doesn't our cultural understanding grow by leaps and bounds every single day?
Yeah.
I remember when I was in the early 1990s learning compound meters during my bachelor's and master's of music. You think we would have used Afropop Worldwide, which was a really popular program on NPR, to do, you know, complex rhythms? No, we didn't do that. But we could have, because you mentioned music from East and West Africa. There's some cool stuff going on. We didn't do that, but that's, you know, again, that's 30 years ago. This is how far out of step we've been. And then the next thing that I think I want to just say this because it's really important. You cannot have change unless you change the people who are in decision-making positions. You cannot keep expecting different results if in your nonprofit organizations, your boards for 30 years have the same people making the same decisions. If your senior management teams are the same people making the same decisions. If your professors are the same people making the same decisions. We've got to have people in decision-making positions that have a different life experience. I cannot speak to a person who their family tree suddenly goes cold 150 years ago because they don't know how the family was brought to the United States because it was against their will. I cannot speak to that experience. It does something to you long term. I can speak to the experience you know, of an Asian country, of India, of fighting colonialism, of then winning independence. And suddenly, after winning independence, Indians started putting up pictures again of Her Royal Majesty the Queen and started patronizing the golf club as though they were back in Great Britain. I mean, we are very complex creatures and we make some really cringeworthy, strange decisions once we believe we have our freedom to do whatever we want. But we need people with multiple backgrounds and experiences putting together a curriculum. And that, to me, is what's lacking.
Agreed. I totally agree with that. I think the curriculum, I think the hiring of faculty, diverse faculty, diversifying your boards, your staff, all of that, when you have the perfect combination of all of those things together, that's when real change happens. And when you're missing one of those things, that's when you have opposition. Jérémy, Krishna, thank you so much for hosting me here.
Thank you very much for having us.
Always welcome. Please come back anytime.
I will, because we've got more stuff to talk about.
You got it.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm so excited about our partnership between our two organizations. This is going to transform so many lives of students and their families in South King County, and I am just ecstatic. So thank you both for your help in making all of this happen.
Thank you.
And thank you as well for watching this episode of Unmute the Voices, and of course, hearing this exciting announcement that we're making between Key to Change and Seattle Symphony. Join us next time for another episode of Unmute the Voices. I'm Dr. Quinton Morris. I hope you have a great day.